Right lads, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. It's an historical night for Newcastle United Football Club. The players, the manager, the staff and the fans as Newcastle secure themselves Champions League qualification. Champions League football will be being played at St James's Park next season for the first time since, I want to say 2003, maybe 2002. I know it's been about 2 decades anyway since Newcastle have stepped foot in Europe's elite competition, and they will be doing so again next season. As it's confirmed, they will be finishing inside the top 4 courtesy of a 0-0 draw against Leicester tonight, even though Leicester were massively up against it. And to be fair, if it wasn't for the fact they had defended absolutely resiliently and resolutely overall, Newcastle probably should have won the game besides that. But Newcastle had to settle for a 0-0 draw, and yep, they won't complain because, like I said, the Newcastle fans, the Geordie boys, will be checking their passports are in date, and they will be getting on Ryanair with immediate effect once obviously the groups are announced to book those fucking flights all over Europe, because they are going on a European tour, as has been confirmed tonight. And yeah, what a job Eddie Howe has done at this Newcastle team. That's exactly what I'm going to be talking about now in this video. So I guess we'll just get straight into it. But first and foremost, subscribe to the channel. We are looking to hit 3,000 subscribers on this channel as soon as we possibly can. Leave a like in the video if you do go on to enjoy, and turn on that notification bell as well, because you will never miss one of these absolutely brilliant videos. Said no one ever. But without further more bullshit chat about supporting the channel, let's get into this video now. So yeah, first of all, just what a job Eddie Howe has done at this Newcastle team. I'm going to say it, I think Eddie Howe deserves to be the manager of the season in the Premier League this season. I know Guardiola's obviously won the league and is on course for a treble. I know Mikel Arteta has done absolute wonders in terms of getting Arsenal into title contention this season. I know De Zerbi's done wonders at Brighton, Emery's done wonders at Aston Villa, Marco Silva's obviously done a good job keeping Fulham up comfortably. But I just think with the job Eddie Howe's done at Newcastle this season, I don't think it can be underestimated, honestly. I mean, even the job he did last season in terms of turning a Newcastle team who looked absolutely hopeless and just devoid of any sort of quality or belief in themselves, and especially in terms of the football they were playing, who were obviously rock bottom when Eddie Howe took over this team. I think it was November or October of last season, and just to get them finishing mid-table, to get the bounce back in St James's Park, and to get this team playing some good football with some additions like Bruno Guimaraes and Kieran Trippier, for example. And obviously then they've been able to strengthen in the summer as well with the likes of Nick Pope, Alexander Isak, etc., Sven Botman obviously. And look, I know, like I said, they've spent a bit of money, but to be honest, the money was always going to be spent there. And even still, if you look at the money that Newcastle have spent, the amount they've spent, it's not really been that much in terms of the fact that, first of all, the potential they have to spend, and second of all, the money that teams around them have been spending. And they spent big money on Isak, they spent decent money on Guimaraes, but the players like Dan Burn, for example, Nick Pope, Kieran Trippier, all been, very shrewd pieces of business, and all have contributed massively to this Newcastle team that has achieved such a historic feat tonight and this season overall under Eddie Howe. And like I said, just an absolutely ridiculous job he's done at Newcastle in terms of implementing a system that involves an aggressive press out of possession, and in possession they're extremely energetic, they're direct, and they cause teams a hell of a lot of problems in possession. And obviously that has been shown this season, given the fact that statistically, judging by the table, they are the 3rd best team in the Premier League this season, behind Man City and Arsenal. And yep, like I said, just in terms of, if we go through Newcastle's team, as you can see on screen, this is obviously the main team they've gone for this season. You've got Nick Pope, who's obviously, in my opinion, probably the best shot stopper in the league. I think there's, you're not going to find a better shot stopper than Nick Pope in the Premier League. I just think in terms of, obviously he's not the best in terms of the ball with his feet, but he doesn't need to be. He makes up with it for the saves he makes, the amount of saves he makes, the quality of saves he makes, and yet just how good he is at just the basics of goalkeeping, keeping the ball out of the net from opposing strikers. The defence then, they obviously do like to play with an elbow tactic, where Kieran Trippier obviously is given more license to go forward and roam in the final third, and in possession be able to have a bit more license to obviously use his creative spark, which obviously he's been absolutely brilliant for this season. In terms of shot creating actions, I think he's probably well up there in terms of the most for any player in the Premier League, let alone fullback. And Dan Burn obviously then does really well in terms of being able to shift across to form a back three with Sven Botman and Fabian Schär, who themselves have been very, very impressive in terms of not only their defensive ability, but also their ability to contribute to build up as well with the ball at their feet. And Dan Burn obviously, like I said, adds a little bit of stature and obviously his height as well to win those aerial duels out of possession if, needs be, with Newcastle's press, which will in turn force opposition defenders into playing long balls, which Dan Burn is able to deal with his height. In midfield, you've got Bruno Guimaraes, who's just an absolute ridiculous footballer. He's been playing a 6, an 8 and a 10 all in one this season for Newcastle, and with Sean Longstaff and Joe Linton mainly just in front of him. Obviously Joe Willock has played there most of the time as well and has been absolutely brilliant this season in terms of his ball progression. But Bruno, who just makes things tick, he's obviously very tenacious, very energetic, is able to cover ground, but in possession is able to unlock a defence, and yep, his ability to get the ball as far forward as quick as possible and be direct with his passing range has been absolutely second to none for Newcastle this season, hence why he's been so important. And yep, Sean Longstaff as well, who can't be underestimated, a player who was pretty much seen as average under Steve Bruce before Eddie Howe came in, and Eddie Howe's really revitalised him, giving him a role in this team, which is first and foremost to cover for Bruno Guimaraes when Guimaraes wants to be a little bit more adventurous and go into those more advanced areas in the pitch to try and, create things in the final third for Newcastle. Sean Longstaff's engine and ability out of possession, I think, has been massively important too, giving Bruno Guimaraes that licence to go forward, and obviously then Sean Longstaff playing in that double 8 position with Joe Linton and being able to get into space in possession on the half turn to create chances and create overloads on the flanks, especially supporting Joe Willock on that left hand side, or Alan San-Maximin for example, whoever's played there on that left hand side, and Miguel Almiron or Jacob Murphy down that right hand side to create overloads down the flanks to obviously help create chances for Newcastle in a more free flowing fashion. And then up front you have Alexander Isak or Callum Wilson. I mean, I've got Alexander Isak in this graph because I think that he's been the main striker for Newcastle for the majority of this season, even though Callum Wilson has scored more goals and has had an absolutely ridiculous season, and especially run of form recently in front of goal, where he's got I think 18 goals in the Premier League this season, which is absolutely insane, especially considering he's not been the main striker. As I said, Alexander Isak has been the main striker this season, and Alexander Isak, I've said it time and time again in this season, I think he's a striker who's got potential to go right to the very top, in the words of Harry Redknapp. And yep, he's an absolutely brilliant striker, got absolutely everything you'd want in a modern day striker, once again in terms of ability to play with his back to goal, his ability to drop deep and get involved in link-up play, his technical ability, which is absolutely ridiculous. He's able to beat a man, his ball carrying ability is absolutely brilliant, his technical ability in terms of picking a pass, he's obviously intelligent in terms of knowing where to be to sniff out goals, and does score goals himself. And I just think he's got absolutely everything to be a world-class striker for the next 5 to 10 years in Newcastle. Even though they paid 60 something million for him, that's looking like an absolute steal with every single passing game that goes by, to be honest. And yep, like I said, this Newcastle team, they've been so difficult to play against this season, so difficult to defend against, with how direct, how energetic, and their patterns of play in the final third. They've been just so good to watch, Newcastle, especially with the energy they play with, out of possession and in possession as well, which the Newcastle fans have really welcomed and brought into their hearts and really fed off, to be fair, because the one thing I've always said is that the Geordies are a fan base that, they thrive off, the team providing energy for them, and with this energetic style of play that Eddie Howe's implemented into Newcastle, the fans are obviously going to feed off that, which is only going to help the team be able to get that energy to translate into themselves and to just be able to embrace that energy, and obviously in turn be able to perform better on the pitch, which I think is a massive part of football, really, is the fans and the impact they do play in terms of feeding the energy and the atmosphere into the players overall. And I mean, the stats perfectly back up Newcastle's direct style of play. They're second in the league for direct speed in meters per second at 1.26 meters per second they average per attacking sequence. They're also second in the league, only behind Manchester United in terms of build-up attacks, 87 in total this season, and they're also sixth in the Premier League as well for high turnovers this season, with a total of 319 as well. So yeah, I mean, the style of play that Eddie Howe has implemented into this Newcastle team deserves absolutely endless amounts of credit, and once again, from what he's taken and what he's done with this Newcastle team in such a short space of time with not a lot of additions. You think of still some players that are still there, with Sean Longstaff, like I mentioned, Callum Wilson, Fabian Schär, who he's turned into an absolute Rolls Royce of a defender in terms of his contribution to build-up play and his ability in possession. Joe Linton, who he's absolutely transformed into one of the best box-to-box midfielders and number 8s in the Premier League we've seen in the last year and a half. And Miguel Almiron, of course, as well, who was literally a meme. I mean, we've all seen that clip of Jack Grealish and how much he was memed before Eddie Howe came in and before this season overall. And this season he's got Miguel Almiron playing like an actual top-class right winger. And again, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think he's really been able to rediscover that form that he had at the start of the season. I think he's been absolutely blistering. His ability to beat a man and then out of possession as well obviously contributes massively to this high press that Newcastle do like to play, given how tenacious he is. And yet, like I said, just to feed all that into one point, Eddie Howe, in my opinion, deserves the Manager of the Year award, given the expectations at the start of the season. I thought Newcastle would be able to finish in and around the top 6, but I did not think for the life of me that they would be able to finish inside the top 3 at the start of the season. And yet they've been absolutely ridiculously good this season, Newcastle, and hence why I think Eddie Howe, in my opinion, deserves the Manager of the Season award for the work he's done at Newcastle this season. And the Geordie fans can party into the night now and over the entirety of the summer, because they don't have the stressful scenario of needing anything from the final game of the season against Chelsea. Not that they'd need to worry anyway, because as you can see, I'm a Chelsea fan. I'll be the first to tell you they'd have fuck all to worry about and will still probably beat us 4 or 5-0 anyway. Newcastle fans, let me know in the comment section below how you're feeling. I'm fairly sure if it was a scale between 1 and 100,000, you'd be pretty close to the 6-figure mark in terms of just how absolutely fucking buzzing you are right now. Yep, like I said, leave a like in the video if you did enjoy it. It would be absolutely hugely appreciated, as would subscribing to to the channel. Like I said, we are looking to hit 3,000 subscribers as soon as we possibly can. And yep, I guess I'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll chat to you later.